I was thinking recently a lot about Lebenskunst. So Lebenskunst in Germany is a philosophically charged term. And there's a lot of, for example, there are Wikipedia pages about Lebenskunst as a philosophical concept. There is no such Wikipedia page in English. There's not even like a proper translation. You can translate it as art of living, but not as a philosophical concept. And so as a concept, it was something that, somebody like Goethe or Thomas Mann or Nietzsche like heavily incorporated in their philosophy. And so the challenge was not only to have like Nietzsche like a philosophical system of sorts, but to translate that into actual life. So what does that specifically mean for the challenges that we face in daily life, like with our relationship, with our partner, with the world, in relationship to ourselves? So it's not just, this spiritual art of living, new age concept, but it's a deep philosophical concept, Lebenskunst, right?
So what makes it deep and different than just, for example, the art of living?
Because, because the challenge is, so you imagine you have a philosophical system,
Hmm.
like any system. You can even take metamodernism or even integral for that matter.
Yeah.
So you have like a very like so you have like a or even okay, let's stay with those two. You have a heavy philosophical concept, but how does it translate for
Oh,
you
okay, got it.
to how do you find the right language and the right justification that you are enabled to have to make out of life like an artwork out of your life in your relationship with your wife, in your relationship with your work, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
the idea is that, for example, that um, you could leave a whole chunk of psychotherapy, to the side, because lots of stuff you have to tackle in order to make your life beautiful in any case,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because it's difficult to make your own life an artwork, let's say.
Yeah. Well, what comes to mind when I think of that is because I'm so immersed in the work of Gurdjieff at the moment, and after our course, there's a way to live with, let's say, a soul, and there's a way to live with soullessly, mechanically,
Right.
without any kind of art uh, to it. And I think that has something. And the word soul, you know, like is something you have. Like when they say this song or this music or this, this piece of architecture, whatever it happens to be, has soul, or this person has soul. I think they have what you're talking about. This German word, they have that. It's like a quality, right? As much as it is, let's say, an art of living is more like it has more of an. I don't know. Is it active? The German
Yeah.
word, or
Yes.
it's also active. So it's a quality of like soul making. But again, I guess that sounds too new age or something for people. People don't like the word soul. People think it's a mystical religious term, and they're turned off by anything that goes in that direction. But I think but they're okay to say that something has, like, music has soul, or hmm, yeah.
Yeah, so there's this German sociologist, Hartmut Rosa,
Yep.
right? And so he wrote a lot about Lebenskunst, specifically about relationship and resonance, right? And
Hmm.
so what the idea is, that you have to go into relationship not only with yourself. Normally you do this, with spiritual traditions, you try to align yourself properly, but you also have to be in proper resonance and proper relationship with the world at large, as if the world is a woman, let's say, for you as a man, right? And so
Hmm.
you're not atomizing anything, or that's my job and I settle for something less because it's kind of convenient. But you have a relationship to the world, at large, and you resonate with everything in it, right? And
Hmm.
so, for example, so it's an active act, and same goes for your relationship. And I was thinking about the meta crisis and the concept. And so, and I'm increasingly on the side of Nora Bateson, because what Nora Bateson says is something similar. You have to be in resonance with the world at large. And then you see all these little things that work to the betterment and to the, to the complexification of the world. But you don't see these things if you disconnect yourself from the meta crisis, because it's something out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to have the proper relationship with the complex set of challenges that the world presents you, and then you see all these little things that work towards a better future, and also the other things that work against a better future, right? But you have to have these resonance field, you might call it soul, with the world per se, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say that what is being called the meta crisis or the meaning crisis is when you've lost that, in a sense. On a very existential level. You're kind of, you're in a dead world. You're in a world of objects that don't have any. There's no field. The field is gone. I mean, I guess what Nora wants us to connect to the field, because she's fed up with all this sort of very hyper conceptual, block like thinking or systems theory, where you impose your map of the world onto reality, whereas the field is primary. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from Nora, and from also from Bonita Roy, and a lot of especially women. It's like, okay, all these guys have all these like theories about the world, but where's the soul in them? Where's the poetic resonance within them? Where is the where is the, let's say, the style even? In a way, it's kind of a question. It's also a question of style, in a sense.
Right.
Which brings me again to another thing that I've been thinking about Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff said that you have to play a part, you have to act a part out, right, in the world, and also remain free within. So you're acting out this, whereas people, I think, are just acting out this thing mechanically that they've inherited and are stuck in it. Whereas a real soulful life is you're acting out the persona, fully, and in a way impersonally at the same time, and that is having style. So I have two things in the art of living, if that's what it means, is style and soul.
Right. Whereas I don't think, and I think you're alluding to that, because it's something, it's not something that you achieve easily. I don't think it's something that we have forgot. I don't think that it's something that we have forgotten. It's something that we really have to strive for and really
Yes.
to fight for, because it's something, it's like, it's weirdly something that Peterson is also alluding to. It's a struggle. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking in terms of, let's just look at a job or a work that somebody has. And you can certainly, have a job that you don't feel personally connected with, and that's perfectly fine. But then when you scale it up, you can have, a passion, and so, which is like a kind of different quality and a different soul if you have like a real passion and you try to translate it into the world. But then imagine, the world reacts favorably to your passion and you go into a relationship with your passion in the world. Suddenly you are like in a love relationship, in a resonance with your passion and the world. And normally we really call this a real career, right? And so it's like, it's not easy. It's like,
No, that's why Gurdjieff would call that the work, and he would say you have to struggle with yourself.
right.
All the time. Like, you really have to struggle with yourself. So it's not just this kind of nice emergence, that people talk about.
Right.
Maybe that's the problem with this idea of emergence, is there's a fantasy attached to it, is, oh, we can just play and something will emerge. And this, I guess that's the masculine aspect of the phallic aspect of just struggling with yourself so that you become a man and not a dog. Sorry, I'm over quoting Gurdjieff here today, but
No worry.
but
No worries. But the idea is life is so, I mean, the notion is that life is so complex with so many different aspects and challenges that you face from the moment you stand up in the morning till the moment you go bed at night. There's so many things. And to find an overarching kind of attitude and style, as you said, or soul to
Hmm.
bring this all to, that's tough and hard work.
Yep.
Right. But it's also something, and that's again what I mean. It's like, it's a struggle. If you're involved in that struggle, I would think like a huge part of therapeutic work just falls to the side because it's that what you do in order to bring harmony to you. It is therapeutic in nature, right? And I
Hmm.
think, to go to a therapist is in a kind of way, in some ways, like a substitute for a missing Lebenskunst, as
Yeah.
vivendi, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think who was it who talked about psychotherapy being the greatest failure of the 20th century? I don't know. It was a Jungian, the guy who wrote Soul Code. I can't remember his name. He wrote a great deal about how it's a kind of lame version of confession,
right.
right? Not even as powerful as that because you don't have the whole, mythopoetic, mystic quality to it. It's just you're so obsessed with your own subjectivity, and I think that's the thing is people. I think that's the tension is like people want to bring the subjective and put that as the most important thing, whereas there's also your own nothingness to consider and and your own um yeah your the lack of any reality to that
Right.
subjectivity.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's what I'm missing. That's what I'm missing again with integral and even meta modernism, that as conceptual models, they're great, but Wilber doesn't integrate the artistic aspect of what it means to be in a relationship with the woman, let's say as a man or as a woman, whatever. And then you try to make out of that relationship an artful, beautiful thing itself, like a yoga, like a relationship yoga.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
And so you can, and what Wilber focuses on, all the levels and quadrants and shadows and lines and whatnot, and all this is fine and dandy, but it doesn't really pinch to the core of what it means to be in a yoga relationship. I don't mean this in a new age way, but in a Lebenskunst relationship with your significant other, because that's a struggle, and then and you it's a very
That's a
complex.
tango,
Yeah,
so to
it's a
speak.
tango, but it's very
Uh-huh.
subtle, very subtle dance, and it's a challenge, and it's a yoga as something that you put on yourself in order to grow. And it's like, yeah, you can settle for less, you can have like a relationship out of convenience or whatever, but you can also enter, as you enter like a passion in a career, you can enter like in a relationship which resembles a yoga, right? And then it
Yeah.
becomes a Lebenskunst, then it becomes something else.
And I wonder if Lebenskunst, part of that is, I hope I'm saying the word right, is it has to do with your being able to live out not just one kind of identity, not just a monological type of identity, but to move in between all your different identities, like your different sub personalities, your different characters, your different kinds of theatrical, aspects. It's sort of like the great artists I find are sort of you can't pin them down to any kind of clear this is who they are, right? They're always in a process of transformation, whereas the more mediocre artists kind of become one thing, they become one archetype and they stay like that forever, right? Like I think I like Bruce Springsteen. I like his music, but he's got this working class American guy persona, and he just milked that completely. But he didn't really change that much, all the way through his career. I mean, his music is good. He just taps one source. Whereas I think a superior artist like you know like
David Bowie.
Bowie or Dylan or something like that are always in a process of intense reinventing because they know they know that whatever kind of finality or ultimate archetype that they come up with is a limitation, and it needs to be sort of transcended, and the next thing has to appear for it to remain, a living process.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. So the question that you answered or I had was like, so do you have to be like flexible and, to be able to access different subpersonalities? I think what you said, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this book, very famous book for this German professor, philosophy professor. It's called Philosophie der Lebenskunst, Philosophy of Art of Living, and
Hmm.
it's Wilhelm Schmidt is his name, and he says exactly that. So you have to be very fluent. You have to be able to shift perspectives very rapidly, you would say, to access different parts of yourself, to be able to live that out, but also have like this kind of organizing principle, what you call style. So you have a
Yeah.
way, it's like this kind of witness or this organizing principle, and through an entity by which you can live out different principles of yourself or different aspects of yourself, but in
Yeah.
a coherent kind of way. And so,
Yeah, there's a central gravity, but there's a lot
yes,
at the more central gravity you have, the more ability you have to, be extremely creative with who you are. So there's a powerful identity, but it's not fixed in any kind of, let's say, parameters which you can define or reify or as some ultimate thing.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a great concept. And that was kind of Ivan Illich's uh, conclusion in his book, was that we need to restore the art of living. Like, it could be a new age concept, but I also think it's. I mean, if we don't have a better translation, because living should be defined as an art, more than anything else, I would say.
but he spoke German, didn't he?
And he was spoke. Yeah, I wonder if he wrote the book in English, but I wonder if he was actually referring to
To
that
Lebenskunst, yeah.
concept in German, because he was indeed, a German speaker. Yeah.
Right. And so again, it's like lots of these conceptual philosophical models, they just lack, like a translation into, how that works in your daily life. How does, for example, metamodernism really make your life and your relationship with your wife better? It's like, yeah, okay, you're oscillating and you have to, but okay, so but you have also to do the dishes, and there has to be like a complex subtle dance of how you move with your wife through the day, and how does metamodernism or integral help you with this? And so I mean, it's like you can have a theoretical concept about that,
Hmm.
but again, it doesn't really tap into to the artistic struggle that
Yeah.
that's there.
And there's also a singular quality to good artists. They don't need to belong to any kind of intellectual cult, right? They might be inspired by integral or metamodernism, but as soon as they start declaring themselves as that, I become suspicious, right? As soon as somebody says I'm an integral artist or something, I remember these guys when Wilbur was coming out, they're saying, "Oh, now we're making integral art." It's like, no, you don't. You can't do that. You can't just take
Yes,
a
exactly.
theoretical concept and turn it into art. You can't
Yes.
do that, because it's about your whole being, and it's about, it's a very deep and mysterious process, and you can't describe yourself as that. Maybe in the future somebody will look back and say, "Oh, that was, integral in some way."
Right.
I doubt it, because it doesn't feel powerful enough to me. But yeah, I think that is the problem. It's like, I think people want to be part of a cult. There's a real occultic quality to people. They just want to be part of some kind of a cult. So they identify with a group or a theory, or I mean, we all do. Like, we can't, we all, we want to be part of the Parallax cult or whatever it happens to be, and then that will define
Parallax.
us. But yeah, you didn't realize that we're starting a cult yet?
We
Tom?
do?
Yeah, of course we are. That's where all the money is. The guy from Scientology says, if you want to make money, you have to start a religion. That's where the
Ah,
money is.
I thought it was a project out of Lebenskunst, what you're doing, instead of.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe we're not on
Well,
the same boat, Andrew.
we
So
hope so. We
let's
hope
get our
so.
let's
We
get
hope
our
so.
priorities
I know
straight.
you're a German idealist. You think that that's what you're doing, but really you're just making a cult. I'm teasing. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, but again, it's like I don't necessarily think that you have to be like a great artist or even an artist at all, right,
Yeah.
to practice Lebenskunst. But because it's such an intimate, again, relationship to the world at large in itself, relationship that you can have with a partner, which I would personally treat as something else because
Yeah.
that's a different Sloterdijk would say sphere or bubble.
Yeah.
And then the proper relationship that you have with yourself, by which we all normally mean we have like a meta model or like a spirituality by which we properly align ourselves to our visions or feelings or everything. And so that's not and so that's the interesting thing. And I think that's something that
Mhm.
Owen and the boys from the Dark Renaissance that we had on last week, that we talked about this, that
Yeah.
that you know to
Yeah.
find the right way to do art without putting a label onto it, you
Hmm.
know
Hmm. Yeah. There is a way in which a good artist is able to speak about their art. But on the other hand, um, and sometimes it's good to listen to Rilke or read Van Gogh's or all these artists who write and
Sure.
not read the critics.
Right.
But on the other hand, like I think sometimes you need to throw away the critics and just listen to the artists instead because there's more life there. But on the other hand, again, I don't think in a way the artist should be overly critical of what he's doing, and often that's an afterthought. Like, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. What is the function of criticism when you're creating art, and how much should that be turned on, and how much should that be just like obliterated, right?
Yeah.
And you should just go into the experience, the phenomenology of it, rather than trying to have a plan or a um, it's an interesting question because if you go totally into phenomenology, then you just end up kind of with noise. But
Yeah.
if you but so you need some relationship with philosophy. But if you become too hyper conscious and philosophical in your art, then you just end up making philosophy and philosophizing rather than making art. Or theorizing or doing social commentary or all the boring kinds of art,
Right.
which are the most boring kinds of art for me are like political art. I mean, unless it's really there's a kind of political art that's also existential that can be powerful, but mostly political art to me is a waste of time.
Yeah, Banksy would be like political art, no? So
Something
yeah.
like that. Like you make these grand statements about the world.
Yeah.
That's when I lose interest.
It's interesting. I had this discussion, a couple of days ago about, the different phases of Picasso,
Yeah.
right? And so, of course, you can make the critical argument that his earlier works, when he was really, you know, um, involved in,
Communism.
pre-impressionistic, no, pre-cubistic kind of
Hmm.
painting, that his art of the quality of his art was higher than, that in his last years, where, I mean, I told you, I was once in Barcelona and visited the famous Picasso Museum, and there was just a wall apparently like 20, 15, 20 times the same kind of picture, painting of his terrace. I mean, like all different, but all kind of the same, and all drawn very hush hush. Like you could see, oh no, that is like there's somebody like uh, experienced at the end of his life like an extreme urgency to express something, and he tries again and he tries again, and it's even like you feel that there's a hallucinogenic element, a psychedelic element with the
Hmm.
choosing of the colors, and you could make the critical argument that's worse, or worse art or worse in quality than what he did before. But if you look at it from the Lebenskunst aspect, so you have to imagine an old man,
Yeah.
right? and so he is not concerned anymore with, the fine subtle strokes of, like a grandiose painting, but he looks for something on the terrace.
Yeah. Well, he
He is
said that he actually made the claim that in his later period that he wanted to paint like a child, like that his realization was like, oh, now I should just paint like a child. That doesn't mean naive, because you have to go through the whole process of learning the classical forms, and then
right,
you can deconstruct them. You can't just start off as a child, because then you're childish.
right,
But it's like the difference between Nietzsche's child, which comes at the end of the process, right?
right.
Not
Yeah.
not the child that comes at the beginning, who's just following his sort of whims. It's more
Yes.
like finding this original sort of energy, and I think that comes in later life. It's very interesting. The painters often have their greatest period at the end of their life, whereas musicians burn out, have their greatest period when they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
Um, um, that's a very interesting thing. Like the great artists in France are all like, some of them did their best works. Chagall was like 90. He did amazing things. All the impressionists had very long lives, whereas I think the American artist is sort of like a crash and burn, has a crash and burn kind of mentality.
It's interesting that you mentioned Nietzsche, because I mean Nietzsche worked on Lebenskunst. He was like a famous proponent, and so the idea of the to become a child again,
Mm-hmm.
to re-enter, but with a full-fledged consciousness that you
Yeah,
developed over the last 70 years, and re-enter this kind of magical state when you were like a child, where everything kind of came together automatically, where world wasn't broken yet, in a
yeah.
kind of sense. But with all your abilities, with all your capacities, with all your, insight, and maybe deep insight into the world, to be
Well,
in
maybe
this.
not. Maybe your critical mind starts to dissolve and something else. Maybe you don't have
Right. Mm.
this powerful critical mind that you once had, but the imagination starts to come in. Again, Gurdjieff would say that after 60 is when you really enter the spiritual dimension, right, of your existence,
Yeah.
and that is a return. In a way, it's a return. It's not knowledge. It's a return to innocence. The more than
Yeah.
knowledge, I would say. It's knowledge is earlier. Yeah,
I've heard this, in a recent interview with Martin Scorsese as well. So I don't know how
hmm
old he's, like 85. And
yeah,
so like it was like for the press junket of Killers of the Flower Moon. And he says like, no, he has this urgency. He's still looking, for something that is, and he just feels, that he understands cinema now. Just
yeah.
now,
Just now at
you know.
85. Yeah, yeah,
That's
right.
what's insane, you know?
hmm Yeah. I mean, a lot of the great artists say that. Andrew, what's not Andrew Lloyd Wright, the Frank Lloyd Wright, the architecture. He
Yeah.
was like 95. He said, the really great artists retain the childhood, their childlike quality,
Yeah.
all through their life, whereas the
Yeah.
average person kind of loses it. It's either the average person becomes a Peter Pan, or like that the mediocre artist becomes a Peter Pan in a way and kind of burns out because he can't grow up,
Yeah.
whereas the great artist retains the per ateris, or the innocence, or the child, while being fully adult. That's more difficult. I
Yeah.
heard this about Goethe also, that he was like, he had kind of a mother complex, which is often leads to like this Peter Pan thing, where you want to reject the adult world, and you live in a world of romantic sensation, and it's a sort of romantic early period that many artists go through, and then he had to get a really boring job, sort of at a as an administrator in the government, which allowed him to be an adult, and actually, it allowed him to just have daily banal discipline and be a human and social and all this, and then he did even better work, because
Goethe.
he had integrated the he
Wasn't
had
that
become a
Kafka?
No, that's what I heard. I heard
Okay.
that being spoken. That was in the Marie Louise von Franz book. She spoke
Right.
about Goethe's early career
Oh,
as
right.
he was kind of she wrote a book about the Parallax, which is the golden boy, the Peter Pan, the one who is like, and they always have a mother complex, and they're always romantics, and
Right.
often they kind of they do the Kurt Cobain thing early on, or else if they don't, then they get to the next stage of their artistic career, and then they could be a really good artist, right?
Yeah.
That makes any
It's,
sense.
it's interesting. Like coincidentally, I was like, scrolling on YouTube, and there was this clip of Eric Weinstein, being on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were talking about science and the role of what's this guy's name? The black scientist who is always like the proponent of
Oh
I
God,
forgot
that guy. Yeah,
what's his name again? Shit.
insufferable,
No,
insufferable
he said something. I will. The name will
character.
come to me. So he says, like, as a presenter of scientific program, you don't find anybody better
Mm-hmm.
than Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil
That's his.
deGrasse Tyson. Yes, yes.
So, but Weinstein said he is not a real physicist in the sense of a practicing um, physicist, and so he doesn't know that you need to. And he said, you need to be at least half of a quack, in order to create something really new.
Yeah,
Because
you
if you
can.
like,
Yeah,
if you're confined to what science has created till at that point, then you're like, oh no, everything outside of it, it's a non-tema, it's a non-topic. So you have to be like a little bit on the crazy side, on the quack side, or on the childish, like
you have to
child
be.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, in order to do something new, like to be a little bit on the edge of chaos, to create new information and to be open and to integrate that into a new kind of theory or model or whatever.
Right.
Art.
Otherwise, you're just a very intelligent talking head, or educator who's just
Yeah.
repeating stuff. And well, it's fine if people are want to, if that's what their thing is. But there's always like, I mean, I went, oh my God, this guy. I have a like a reaction against him every time I see him because I feel like he's one of these people that are pseudo intelligent. There's this. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm sorry, Mr. Tyson, if I've got you all wrong. But I don't like insulting people. But I feel like there's these incredible pseudo intelligences out there. Like Sam Harris is another one who he's kind of he's a talking head. He's a pseudo intelligence.
I like his podcast though. His waking up. It's like the stuff when he talks about psychedelics. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, he's got an amazing mind. He's just, I feel like I'm listening to a robot. That's all.
Yeah, that might be
And
just his way of speaking, maybe.
this monotone way of speaking, and also he has a sort of, he's chosen his hill to die on, and he's going to stick with that. This kind of rational, nihilistic atheism, pseudo Buddhism. So he that's where he takes his stand, and I find it kind of like, I find it, this phenomenon that we're talking about, he hasn't been willing to sort of stay on the edge, that he's too much of a persona for my
Yeah.
taste. But
Again,
I think only interesting people are the ones that are kind of a bit off, a bit weird, a bit like wrong, a bit like fucked up, like not like,
there's certainly a
why.
nuisance to deal with, in most cases.
Hmm.
It's like it was probably not very pleasant to be around Picasso, for sure.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And even there's something about Eric Weinstein. He's kind of a nutcase, and that's what I like about it. But and there's,
From the distance, yes. Mhm.
yeah, but you're right. He'd be kind of, he yeah, these and again these people, these talking heads, these people of the, let's say, who are supposed to be there to express the cultural paradigm. They're always limited. Perhaps because they are so big, you know.
Yeah.
They've gotten so big that they've lost something. Like when you get big, you kind of lose something. You have to figure out a way to, if you get big, you have to figure out a way to really, you know, be strangely um, invisible. Because if you're playing to the crowd, then I think you get lost. I think
I
you
think
just
like
become a caricature of yourself. You just get end up repeating the same tropes, and you have audience capture and all that. And that's what most of the podcast guys, that's what happens to them, I would say. Whereas
but also
the one I like, the guy I really think is beautiful is as a podcaster is Rick Rubin, because I
what?
think he really understands.
Rick, yeah,
Rick
yeah, yeah.
Rubin really understands the voice, like what matters in the artistic voice. He understands the style of living better than any of the other podcasters out there so far that I've heard. Is Rick Rubin.
That's true.
He really gets what you're talking about. He gets this art of life. He embodies that art of life. He's not on a political side. He's not a talking head. He doesn't even bother to. He just gets the art of life.
Right.
So that's what I
But
like.
what I also find interesting in this context, I mean, you know, art of life, Lebenskunst in the sense, you know, not only to have like a relationship to the world, but to a relationship also to yourself, right? And normally we kind of use spirituality to find this kind of proper alignment. But I mean, I don't know if you know this feeling, but at some point, spirituality kind of falls away and sheds off, and then you're left with the tools, and then the art begins, the art of dealing with your own consciousness, the art of dealing with your own psyche, right?
Perhaps,
So
yeah.
so you have all these different kind of spiritual tools, meditation, something from that religion, but then suddenly something else comes in focus, you know, this eternal ebb and flow of chaos and order in your own psyche, and you kind of try to go with these internal, let's say, autopoietic kind of processes and movements,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's, you know, like that's a different kind of spirituality.
Yeah, I
I
mean
would.
that maps on to the three yanas, the three vehicles of Buddhism, which are, you know, the narrow path is the path of discipline. It's when you're young, you discipline yourself, you learn a trade. You don't know anything yet. And then you move on to, let's say, the open path, which is the kind of the path of love and the path of wisdom. And that is a very much an ethical path, and even an experiential path, right? And you have a glimpse of emptiness, and then and then in the Vajrayana, the tantric path, you're working with energies. You're not working with. I mean, you have a basis in the other two, but you're not. And the techniques again are there, but they're transparent, and there may be many of them, but they're not. It's not about. It doesn't have the same kind of aim. There's an aimless aim to it or something. There's no
Yeah,
longer this a project of, you know, it's no longer like, okay, you're trying to get somewhere.
right.
It's the aimless aim, and then that's, I think it's, when it's done well, it is purely a collective art form, or that's what it should be at
A
any rate.
collective art form.
Well, in terms of collective, in the sense, like I would say individual art is different than collective art. Collective art is more like you know, is a group activity. So it is very, yeah. There's a strong individuality about the people, but there's also group sadhanas, and you know, you create something within the group, within the dynamic of the sangha, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, but I was
But it's
more talking.
it's not dogmatic. It's very ontological, and you know, people don't like that, but
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking more in terms of, you know, okay, so what is the proper relationship that you might have with yourself and the world, because like you're obviously you can't domesticate life itself, life throws things at
Hmm.
you, and
Hmm.
so like what is the relationship that you have to yourself in order to for the lack of a better word, to dance, to do tai chi, within this resonance field of the world that you're engaged in with the things. So how much does it throw you off balance if
Hmm.
a new bill comes in? How much can you dance with something unexpected? How much, it's like, how much of a blissful idiot can you be, like Alexis Zorbas,
Yeah.
to enjoy the things that don't work,
Who's
right?
Alexis Zorbas?
Zorba the Greek?
Oh, Zorba the Greek. Oh, Zorba the Greek. Yeah, right. Zorba the Greek. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, Gurdjieff would say if it's easy, it's shit, right? He calls it merde, right?
Right.
So I think that requires, again, it requires moving towards the shock. It requires moving towards the difficulty. It requires moving towards the awkwardness. It requires, and then you get a style. It's a strange paradox, right? Because if you
Right.
just stay in whatever the blissful thing, or the ignorance, or the or the if you stay in the flow of things, you just get stuck in a stagnant pond. you know.
Yeah.
So you have to go. There has to be this extra step or this extra shock.
I think it was Osho, of all people, who said that the perfect man is a mixture out of Buddha and Zorba the Greek. And that's
Yeah,
it.
Zorba the Buddha. He wrote a book called that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure,
Ah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Zorba the Buddha, because the Buddha is the one who's ethically, and he's clear, and he just has a clarity, right? It's just like prajna, clarity.
Right.
And then Zorba's the wild man, the wild energy, the wild magician who plays with energy. So
Yeah.
I think you need. I think if that is a good model for what, I don't
For
know,
Lebenskunst.
for Lebenskunst. Yeah, it is.
To have, to be fully engaged within the world and with the playfulness, but to have, this heightened and, awareness or consciousness, that is just able to witness, let's say, and to have this interplay, or then you can maybe say this oscillation between, the playfulness and the seriousness and everything.
Yeah,
But this is like I think, like, as a concept, I think we need to talk way more about Lebenskunst as a struggle and as an art form, in the philosophical, conversation. And I think,
yes,
and it's like, because it's such a huge part of European discourse, and I rarely see that even mentioned in, American discourse, because it's just, it's so optimize everything, and everything is clear cut, and it's like, it's a little bit weird, as if we're machines, but we're not. It's like, it's nice to have, model about 4 quadrants, but life is like a dance, like it's like an orgasm,
yeah,
building up, releasing, the
yeah,
heart pulsating. There's something else going on there.
yeah.
And so and it's very, and I know that it's very hard to model that and to conceptualize that, but otherwise it just gets, bloodless, and it
Well,
becomes
as you
blood.
were speaking, I thought, like I said, what style, and but also you could add taste to it, right? Like,
Right,
because when the word, I could almost taste the word when you say it. So
right.
so so I, although I don't speak German, I think there's some sort of metaphysical depth to that word. I don't know if we could bring it into the English language somehow, or find a substitute, but I agree. And the other thing that was kind of interesting, and you were talking about Zorba the Greek, or Zorba the Buddha, right? Being a good model, right, of the integration of sutra and tantra, or something like that. Um, I, I'd say that, and then I said that's what we need for dot dot dot, and you said, what's this word again? The German word,
Lebenskunst.
Lebenskunst. So and I was going to say for something, right? As if there was some utility to that, like as if,
Right.
and I wanted to. There's something about the culture that is always searching for this great utility, and I
Right.
don't think we need utility. I think it's just
Right.
that. That's what we need.
Yes. Exactly.
So I thought that's great. The great topic, great word, um,
There are a
great
couple
thing.
of there are a couple of super interesting things that you just said because neurolinguistic programming, this meta model of language
Mhm.
and whatever by Richard Bandler. And so he says, one of these major insights is that you can have a language that is visually oriented,
Yeah.
right? I see what you say,
Yeah.
for example. I see what you mean. So you
Hmm.
use like verbs that refer to the visual sense,
Yep.
and lots of theories employ a language that is visually oriented, like the four quadrants. It's like you have to so but
What would I
then
get what you mean? I sorry to interrupt, but you
so
said I see, and I said I get what you mean. I wonder that's kind of there's something about that that's more
yeah,
like
exactly. So
different.
what I want to say is, you say taste.
Yeah.
Taste and smell is not something that has utility. It is something that is there. The redness of a rose, the smell of a rose, it has no utility except of being experienced. And Lebenskunst is something to be experienced. It has a certain taste, and in best case scenario, it has your tastes in your life. Your taste, your specific way of tasting the universe,
Yeah.
your
Well, it
way
has
of
great utility in its beauty, but it has no let's say transactional future utility or something.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so to find a language that is more kinesthetically oriented instead of visually, it's like, okay, so how
Mm.
can we talk about the feel of a certain philosophy, how of the taste
Yeah.
of a certain philosophy, and so you
Yeah,
get
that's
what I
great. I
mean?
mean, I
You
don't.
get
I
what I mean?
get. I said I get means I'm into. It's. I don't just see it like it's something over there. I get it means like I'm bringing it inside of myself, right?
Right.
Like I've integrated or I get that, right? So
Right.
I usually say I get that. I've never noticed that about myself, but I think kind of I gravitate towards embodied philosophies, embodied arts, embodied things more than the highly abstract stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not against the abstract stuff, but again, I really notice this intense disembodied quality to language and to discourse today. And I know that when it's more embodied, like I know like Rick Rubin, I can listen to him because he's embodied, and he has this art of life about him. Whereas other people, I don't need to mention names. I don't need to be nasty to Sam Harris anymore because there's lots of people being nasty to Sam Harris, but then I don't get that feeling from him. So I don't care what he says. He could say all kinds of intelligent things. I don't give a shit. He could say incredibly interesting, intelligent things, but I don't care because I don't feel that resonance of the big German word,
Lebenskunst, yes. But
Lebenskunst.
also the interesting thing, and I think that's the dirty little secret of Lebenskunst and philosophy in
Mm-hmm.
general. I think the integral theory is a result of Ken Wilber's Lebenskunst, right? In
Yeah,
some
sure.
way, a capacity. So Mark Aurel's meditation is his expression of his Lebenskunst in a kind of
Mm-hmm.
way, in some ways more pronounced than in others, or like metamodernism is an expression of, let's say, Hansi's Lebenskunst. And
Sure.
the problem with that is that you can take that as a tool, but in the last consequence, you have to develop your own. And you might not get famous with that, but you never will reach your taste, your Geschmack, your feeling, your own Lebenskunst if you try to emulate Marcus Aurelius or Ken Wilber, because that's
Oh yeah.
their thing.
Yeah.
That's their, and that's great. I mean,
Well, it's the
because
problem of imitation, right? Is that there is a
yes,
natural way in which that we imitate our models, especially early on in our life, right? We have to learn through imitation. But
right,
I think when we get when we get on the other side of imitation, which requires some time and maturity, like you can't really be original. I always see 20-year-olds bless them, there's a lot of original, wonderful, incredible, intelligent, fantastic 20-year-olds, with high IQs and incredible abilities, and that. But I often think they lack what you're talking about, because they've managed to develop the style without the substance or something, right? Um, um, so you have to but they have to go through that, and it's fine, and there's nothing. It's totally natural. This
Right.
imitative period, where just imitate, like copying the model, like Bob Dylan sounding exactly like Woody Guthrie in the first 5 years of his music, and then finding this unique voice on the other side of that.
Right.
When you lose the anxiety of influence or something, and you just yeah, because I don't know. Harold Bloom has this phrase, the anxiety of influence, and it's much of the problem is when again, I used this example before. It's like I read all of Henry Miller, and I started writing shitty Henry Miller prose
Right.
because I was so overwhelmed by his style. It took me a while to just get out of it, to get out of that
Right.
universe, so that to leave it behind. And so yeah, it's good that I think it happens. Like, of course, I'm 50. I'm thinking about later ages, and how to have that in your later age and not be this middle aged kind of nullity.
Yeah, I mean, it helps. It helps certainly, to use, the approaches of other people, but it's not, you're not supposed to confuse this with the struggle that you have to endure in order to find your own Lebenskunst, their
Yeah,
own way of bringing it all coherently and beautifully and harmoniously kind of together. Even the things that might sting or might hurt, they're all part of this fresco of your own life. And to bring this all,
yeah,
together, it's like, let Wilber's integral model be Wilber's, but then, what you said with
yeah,
the stages of, in Buddhism, that you have to imitate, then you let go of the tools, and then you find your own taste and your own
yeah.
style. Mm.
And you fail at it too, which is interesting, because you do fail at. We do fail at it, and we have to integrate that as well. It's like I don't know. Most Aboriginal cultures have this idea of the soul and then the broken parts of the soul, right? So somebody was telling me, go back through your life and look at every year and look at parts of what you something traumatic that happened to you in every year of your life, and then you got wounded by something, and you got broken by something, and you get broken by life, right? So it's
Right,
more of a Katsumi thing, where you have to take these fragments and kind of glue them together with gold or whatever, rather than trying to
right,
create some sort of a perfect vehicle.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.